In this video, we will go over what makes a good visualization, and we'll also discuss some of the advanced types of visualizations that we can create in the Tableau desktop environment. To start with, let's discuss what makes up a good visualization. The purpose of a good visualization is to convey information. The idea is to reduce the cognitive effort required by the audience who is seeing the data and trying to interpret the data. Typically, a visualization is communicating to many different people in the audience that have a variety of different backgrounds. The visualization needs to communicate the point to the different types of audience members without having them individually try to interpret the data. Consequently, a visualization's primary purpose is to communicate and to show complicated analysis in a simple way that is interesting and engaging. Now, there are many different types of visualizations that we can create in Tableau, and depending on the type of analysis, we can have our choice of the different types of visualizations that are available. Very frequently, simple text is the most effective way to actually communicate information. For instance, take a look at the slide deck, and on the left-hand side, here's a way to communicate information through the use of a bar chart. The point that the chart is trying to make is that the percentage of children with traditional stay-at-home mothers in 1970 was 41%, and in 2012 it has decreased to 20%. One can use a bar chart to make this point, but sometimes using simple text with highlighted numbers is a more effective way to actually communicate that information. The point is made without the use of bars over here that the audience has to actually interpret. Sometimes we might want to communicate information through the use of tables and heat maps. Now, typically tables and heat maps are not a great way to present data and information to the audience member. However, if we are relying on the use of tables and heat maps to present information, we can actually highlight certain cells in those tables and use heat maps instead of tables to draw the audience's eye to specific numbers, specific values. Let's go ahead and see how we can create heat maps or color-saturated tables in Tableau. When we open up the Tableau environment, we're going to connect to some data. This data is going to be present in a text file. So I'm going to connect to a text file, and the data that I'm going to use in this case is associated, and I'm going to find that data set. And the data sets that I will be connecting to are actually two data sets. The first data set is going to be product lines.csv. And so if I connect to the product lines.csv data set, it's a CSV file. And notice we have brought this data into the Tableau environment. We can see product lines.csv over here. We can see product line, the columns of the product lines .csv file. We can see some of the values in there. This product lines.csv file is actually the data file associated with the classic models database. Now, one of the things that we can do in Tableau is we can actually bring together files that share columnar fields. Product lines that table or that file is actually connected to the products table. Now, on the left-hand side, I also see that the products.csv file is over here. So I can drag the products.csv file in here and notice that Tableau creates this orange line between the two files. This orange line is a relationship, right? And so we can see information about the relationship down here. We have product lines.csv and products.csv, where the product line column in product lines.csv is made equal to the product line column in the products.csv file. And so I can build these relationships in the Tableau desktop environment, allowing me to bring in and bring in multiple files together. So let's start creating a visualization by going to worksheet 1. Now, in our worksheet, we can see our two tables. We can see product lines.csv and we can see product.csv down here. Now, for our example associated with color saturated tables right here, we are actually going to create really a table of product vendor and product line, right? So we want product line as really columns over here and product vendor as rows. And so I'm going to take the product vendor column and drop it right here under rows. And I want to take product line and drop it into columns. Now, in this case, I can pick product line from whichever table I choose. I can pick product line from the product lines.csv, or I can pick product line from products.csv. It doesn't matter which one I choose. I'm going to take the product line from product lines.csv and I'm going to drop it right there. And you can see that it gives me this product line, product vendor, very similar to what we see over here. Right? Now, what we want to compare is, what we want to examine is we want to examine the buy price, the purchase price of products of the different product lines from the different product vendors, right? And so I'm going to take buy price and I'm going to drop it right in here, which is kind of the value area, right? And so you can see that I have the sum of buy price, right? Like what is the total cost of purchasing products, right? Of the different products in specific product lines from the different product vendors right here. Now, sum of buy price is fine, but I think a better option instead of sum of buy price would be to look at the average price it takes to purchase products from all of these different product vendors across these different product lines. And so I'm going to click on the down arrow next to sum of buy price and change this measure from sum to average. Right? So this gives me the average cost of purchasing products in the different product lines from these different product vendors. And if I want, I can kind of make these kind of larger and make sure that they kind of read better. Right? Excellent. Now, when you take a look at this table, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to kind of immediately do? You're trying to find the kind of those high and low values for this average. You're trying to find out which of these values are high, which of these values are low, which vendors are more expensive to buy products from, which vendors are more kind of cheaper to buy products from based on the product line, right? You're trying to do that and trying to interpret the data. So the purpose of a heat map or a color saturated table is to make that information kind of more obvious to you. And the way we can do that is by taking that same buy price, the buy price bill, and instead of dropping it in here, we're going to drop it onto these things called marks. And we're specifically going to drop it into the color, over the color mark right here. As I drop it over the color mark, notice that the color of these numbers changes, right? Now the color of the numbers changes based on this thing called sum of buy price. So instead of making this sum of buy price, I'm going to change the color of this to be the average buy price because it actually represents the numbers over here. So this is a little bit better, right? So you can look at kind of the darker numbers and say like, okay, those are higher average buy prices. The lighter numbers are lower average buy prices for products in the same product line. Now this is good, this is okay, right? But it's not really kind of eye-popping and eye-catching. So let's do this. I want you to then select the average buy price, select that pill right there over the color mark, click on the down arrow next to marks and select square. And take a look at what this does to you. Now this does, it now highlights the cell in the different colors, right? And so we can then say that, okay, the average buy price of products in the classic cars product line from Auto Art Studio Design is higher compared to some of these other vendors over here. It's substantially higher compared to some of these other vendors over here. And so you might want to look at some of these other vendors for products that we might be purchasing from this product vendor, right? So kind of makes that analysis a little bit more obvious, right? This is called a color saturated table. And so I'm just changing the name of this sheet to be so we can have color saturated tables this way. Well, so this is the first type of visualization that we can kind of create in Tableau. Now, there are lots of other types of visualizations that we can also make in Tableau: scatter plots, line charts, bar charts, things of that nature. So let's talk about scatter plots and what the purpose of the scatter plot is. The scatter plot is typically used to show the relationship between two different continuous pieces of information, right? And so Tableau allows us to create scatter plots. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to try to create a scatter plot between the buy price of the product, the purchase price, the price at which we purchase the product, and the price at which the product is sold, or the retail price of the product. So I'm going to create another sheet right here. I want to still work with these two tables that we have. So we want to work with buy price and we want to work with MSRP. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the buy price bill and I'm going to drop it onto, I believe, columns. I'm going to take the MSRP bill and drop it onto rows. And there you go, right? So we have MSRP on the y-axis, we have buy price on the x-axis. Now notice what happens, right? So Tableau has taken MSRP and buy price and has summed up the values for buy price and MSRP of all products, and based on that kind of created for us this one point, right? But that's not what we want to have happen. What we really want to have happen is we want to represent them as individual observations. The way to do that is to click on the down arrow next to sum of MSRP, and instead of treating this as a measure, we're going to treat this as a dimension. And we're going to do the same thing with the sum of buy price. We're going to treat that as a dimension as well. Now take a look at what this gives us. This gives us individual observations of the different products, right? And so this gives us a scatter plot. I'm going to change the name of the sheet and call this as. Now on this scatter plot, we have MSRP and we have buy price. And so we see this obvious relationship, right? As the buy price of the product goes up, we also see that the MSRP of the product goes up, right? And that's great. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can add additional information onto this scatter plot. One thing I could, for instance, add is I don't know what the names of these products specifically are, right? So I can take the name of the product and I can add it onto this thing called, for instance, detail. So I can add it onto this thing called detail. And when I add it to detail, notice when I hover over any of the points, I now see the product name as part of that information about the product that is, right? And so that's kind of useful, but it's also useful to see, okay, what product lines are these different products in? And so I can take the product line, but now I can do that from using either of these. So let's say I'll take the product line from product lines and I want to drop it onto color. Notice what happens. It has colored all of these dots. Now, really these kind of look like Fruit Loops. Instead of having them look like Fruit Loops, I'd rather have them look like M&Ms, for instance. So I'm going to select the product line pill and go to the marks and make this circle. Once I do this, these look more like M&Ms rather than Fruit Loops, right? So this is also useful to see. And so we can see, okay, we have a lot of blue dots, which are kind of classic cars that we buy them kind of at a high price, and we also sell them at a relatively high price, right? But then we have kind of these things, motorcycles up here as well, things of that nature. right? So, so we have this additional information. Well, in addition to these pieces of information, the name of the product, right, and the product line, we can add even more dimensionality to this. For instance, we can see, okay, why don't we change the size of these dots based on how much quantity we have in stock? So I'm going to take the quantity in stock pill and drop it down to size, and take a look at what happens over here, right? And so I can now figure out, okay, how much quantity in stock do I have in hand of certain products? So for instance, right here, right? It's a product that I buy and I sell at at quite a bit, right? So I sell at almost double, for instance, right? And I don't have that much quantity in stock for this 1968 Ford Mustang versus having a lot of stock for some of these other products over here, or a lot of stock for some of these other products down here, right? And so it allows me to kind of perform the sort of analysis through the use of the scatter plot. Now, if you're thinking of like what else could I do, right? This still requires you to kind of perform some sort of interpretation. One of the things that you can do is you can actually take the quantity in stock pill and add it to this thing called a filter. Filters actually allow you to filter data in the visualization. So let's say I had added to this filter, right? And I click on next. I'm just going to set this as like a range of values, right? And so you're still seeing the same visualization. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this quantity in stock and I'm going to show the filter. And so you'll see on the right hand side up here, I have this quantity in stock filter show up. So what I can do is I can change the parameters of the filter over here, allowing me to kind of dynamically change this visualization to focus on the quantity in stock that I have. And so I can do this filter for any of the variables that I have, any of the dimensions that I have. I can do it for buy price, I can do it for MSRP, or I can do it for product line. But in this case, I'm going to do it for quantity in stock, right? And so I can see this kind of dynamic visualization through the use of this filter. So a scatter plot is another type of visualization that we can create in Tableau. Before moving forward, I'm just going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to save my visualization as I'm going to save this as a Tableau packaged workbook. A Tableau packaged workbook is a workbook that actually holds the data with it. And so I'm just going to save this as well. The next type of visualization that we can create are line-based visualizations. Right, now when do you use line plots? Line plots are typically used when you want to show data that is changing over time, right? So you have time-based data and you want to kind of visualize that change over time. Now, one of the line plots that we're going to want to create is to look at payment data over time, right? And so one of the things that we can do is, instead of changing our data source, we are working with the classic models data set over here, product lines, products. I'm going to come back to the data source pill over here. We actually know the data model for the classic models data set, right? So we know that the products table is connected to the order details table. The order details table is connected to the orders table. The orders table is connected to the customers table, and the customers table is connected to the payments table right there, right? And so, and what Tableau does is it kind of tries to automatically find those relationships, which columns have like that same data, and right. So that's kind of helpful for us over here. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's make a new sheet. In this new sheet, we want to work with payment data right here, right? Now, what we want to look at is payment data over time. Now, whenever we are working with time-based data, right, one of the things that we can do is we can extract different elements of time-based data. So what does that mean? Let's say I have like payment date right here. Now notice payment date actually is like data in itself. Like if you go to the data source, payment date has like a month, a day, a year, right? And hours, minutes, and seconds, and so on and so forth, right? But if you come over here, you will see that you only see the year component. And the reason you only see the year component of payment data is because there is a function, the function called year. And so what Tableau is doing is it's extracting the year component of the payment date and displaying only that year component to us. And we can do this for like other things as well, such as month. We can do that for day. So let's say if I do it for month, we will see like the different months of the year, right? And so this is kind of month, and so we can do month of the year as well. So this is like December, March, June, like so you have the month year combinations, right? So let's say in this case I just want to do month of payment date. And so I have month of payment date over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the amount and I'm going to drop it right in there. And so what this gives me is the total amount paid for these specific months, right? And so I have the sum of amount for those different months. Now, if I click on the spell called show me over here, this allows me to plot this data as a line chart. And so I'm just gonna select a line chart right there. And so I have the months and I have like total amounts paid over these months for January, February, March, April, May, June. Now we know that this data is actually for multiple years, right? So there are different years of data that are actually represented over these months. So what we can do is we can add that additional dimensionality. We can add kind of the year, right? We can color the sum of payments by the year these payments were made. And so I'm going to take the payment date pill and drop it on the color mark. And take a look at what we do over here. We are colorizing these lines by year now. So it's broken down the total amount of payments based on the year, and we're seeing the payments of over the different years for the different months, right? And so a line plot like this allows us to display changes over time, right? Now, sometimes you can actually have multiple pieces of information displayed on the same visualization through the use of a blended axis, right? So in this case, what we have over here is we have how much has been paid over these different months. What if I wanted something else? Let's say I wanted to find out information about how many payments were made in addition to how much was paid, right? So what I can do is I can take the check number pill from the payments.csv and drop it onto rows. Now notice, to start off with, it is going to look like this, right? So it's giving you kind of each check number and it's kind of giving you a dot over here. I'm going to come down over here, and instead of treating this as dimension, I'm going to treat this as a count, right? And so now I have two different axes over here, right? So I have the same x-axis, which is year, month of the year, and then I have the count of check number, and I have the amount, right? And so I can kind of take a look and see how many checks were written and how much was the payment that was made. Now, one of the things that when you're working with a blended axis you want to be careful about is you want to avoid making sure, or you want to avoid kind of having, um, you know, two different axes in the same visualization. So one of the things that we could try to do is we have amount as one y-axis and we have count as another y-axis. I can combine these axes, right? So for instance, I can kind of make this a dual axis visualization, right? Like this. Now, what's the immediate problem over here? The immediate problem over here is we do not know which line belongs to which axis. We get confused, right? And so whenever you're working with a blended axis or a dual axis, make sure you're aware of which line, which visualization belongs to which axis, is associated with which axis. Another type of visualization that we can create are bar charts. Now, bar charts are really good to visualize kind of categorical data, right? And so what's some categorical data that we can display? In this case, we're going to work with product lines and how much of that product line has been ordered, right? And so let's go to the product lines fill or the product lines table and drag product line right there. Now we have product line right here, and we have across different orders quantities of these products that have been ordered. And so I'm going to take the quantity ordered and drop it right in there. So we know the quantity of these products that have been ordered, right? So from the classic cars product line, so many products have been ordered, so on and so forth, right? Now I can represent this information through the use of a bar chart like that right there. Okay, so this tells me that, it shows me in proportion kind of how much of each product line has been ordered. Now, this is a pretty good visualization. I can add more kind of information onto this by first colorizing these different bars based on the different product lines. Again, taking the product line pull, dropping onto the color mark. I'm colorizing these different product lines, based on that. Now, this is a horizontal bar chart. Now, if I want to make this a horizontal bar chart, a vertical bar chart, which might be a better way to maybe represent this information, is I can flip the axes where my cursor is right now. I can flip these axes and by just clicking on that button right there, and I can flip my axes right here. Another thing that I can do in Tableau when I'm working in a bar chart is I can actually order these bars, right? So I just ordered these bars by quantity ordered from highest to lowest, and I can kind of change that if I want, right? I'll go back to the default ordering. The default ordering was based on the names of these product lines, right? And so a bar chart is very useful to represent categorical information, right? And so Tableau provides us with a variety of different types of visualizations, and we can kind of add more dimensionality by kind of taking these bars and adding another category to it, right? What's another category? Well, we have a variety of different orders, and these orders have different statuses. And so we can create this type of visualization called stacked bars, right? Or a way to kind of segment these bars, right? And so the way we can do that is, for instance, we can take order status and we can add order status as a column, right? And so now we are taking a look at quantity ordered in the different product lines by different order statuses, right? And so we have shipped, resolved, on hold, in process, disputed, and canceled orders. And within each, we have kind of the different product lines displayed right here. Again, this might not be great visualized as a vertical bar chart, but might be better visualized as, for instance, a horizontal bar chart, right? And so, again, depending on what our goal is, we can use the appropriate visualization in Tableau. And so One thing to realize as we are working with Tableau is to take a look at the different types of visualizations that are possible, and to work with them based on what our need is. This concludes this video on some of the advanced types of visualizations that we can make in the Tableau environment.